The moment she took my hand and silently led me toward her bedroom, every joke I had ever made died on my lips. My heart pounded so loudly that I could barely hear my own footsteps. I had expected an awkward laugh, maybe even a slap on the shoulder for making such a ridiculous comment. Instead, she didn't say a single word. She simply looked into my eyes with a sadness that felt years old and walked away, expecting me to follow. I did. I had no idea that behind that bedroom door waited a truth capable of changing everything I believed about love, loss, and second chances. Before we continue, if you believe kindness can heal broken hearts and that everyone deserves a second chance, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment telling us where you're watching from, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another emotional story. Your support means more than you know. 3 years earlier, I thought my life had already reached its happiest chapter. My relationship with Emma had lasted nearly 5 years. We had planned a future together, chosen neighborhoods where we dreamed of buying a home, and even joked about baby names during late-night drives. But somewhere between busy careers and growing expectations, we slowly became strangers. There wasn't a dramatic betrayal or a terrible argument. There was simply silence. The kind of silence that slowly replaces laughter until two people finally admit that love alone isn't always enough. Our breakup was painful but respectful. We wished each other happiness and walked away carrying invisible scars. What made everything harder was that I had become close to Emma's family. Her parents had treated me like a son, and her younger sister, Sophie, had become someone I genuinely admired. She was kind without expecting anything in return, always helping neighbors, volunteering on weekends, and somehow making everyone around her feel important. After the breakup, I naturally disappeared from their lives because it seemed like the respectful thing to do. Life moved on, or at least I pretended it did. I buried myself in work, accepted promotions, bought a small apartment, and convinced everyone that I was perfectly happy being alone. Friends admired my independence, but none of them saw the empty evenings when I would sit by the window wondering why success felt so meaningless without someone to share it with. One rainy afternoon, nearly 3 years after the breakup, I received unexpected news. Emma's father had suffered a mild heart attack. Though he was recovering well, hearing it shook me deeply. Despite everything that had happened, he had once been one of the strongest father figures in my life. After days of hesitation, I decided to visit the family with flowers and a fruit basket, expecting nothing more than a brief conversation. Emma wasn't home. Instead, Sophie answered the door. For a few seconds, we simply looked at each other. She had changed. She seemed older, calmer, carrying a quiet strength in her eyes that hadn't been there before. She smiled warmly and invited me inside as though no time had passed at all. The visit was surprisingly comfortable. Her parents welcomed me with genuine affection, grateful that I had come. We spent hours talking about ordinary things, work, health, old memories, and life. It almost felt like stepping into another lifetime. As evening approached, Sophie's parents became tired and went upstairs to rest. Sophie and I remained in the kitchen, washing dishes together. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt peaceful. Then she laughed at one of my terrible jokes, the same laugh I remembered from years ago. Without thinking, I smiled and jokingly said that maybe I should just marry her instead. The words escaped before my brain could stop them. I immediately regretted it. I started apologizing, explaining that it was only a stupid joke born from nostalgia and embarrassment. She didn't answer. Instead, she quietly placed the last plate on the drying rack, walked over to me, gently took my hand, and led me upstairs toward her bedroom. Every step felt unreal. Inside her room, nothing appeared romantic. There were no candles, no music, no hidden surprises. Instead, she opened a wooden box from inside her closet and placed it on the bed. Inside were dozens of letters. Some were unopened. Others were folded so many times that the edges had become soft with age. On top rested an old photograph of Emma, Sophie, and me at a family picnic years earlier. My confusion turned into concern. Sophie finally spoke, her voice barely louder than a whisper. She explained that after Emma and I separated, Emma had written many letters to me but never found the courage to send them. Every time she planned to mail one, she convinced herself it was too late. Eventually she met someone else, moved to another city, and tried building a different life. Those letters remained hidden, untouched, collecting dust inside the box. Then Sophie revealed something even more unexpected. She confessed that during those years, she had often wondered whether telling me about the letters would help or only reopen old wounds. She chose silence because she believed both of us deserved the chance to heal naturally. I carefully opened one of the envelopes. Inside were words filled with regret, gratitude, and apologies. Emma admitted that ending the relationship had broken her heart just as much as mine. She thanked me for teaching her what genuine love looked like, even if they hadn't been able to make it last. As I continued reading, tears blurred the ink. Not because I wanted Emma back, but because I finally realized neither of us had ever hated the other. We had simply been too young to understand that love sometimes changes shape instead of disappearing completely. I looked at Sophie. She wasn't crying. She simply watched quietly, allowing me to process emotions I had buried for years. That night, we talked longer than either of us expected. She admitted that watching both Emma and me suffer had been painful. She had spent years hoping we'd eventually find peace, whether together or apart. Before leaving, I thanked her for trusting me with something so personal. For the first time in years, I felt lighter. Over the following weeks, Sophie and I stayed in touch. At first, our conversation centered around her father's recovery. Then they expanded into books, movies, work frustrations, childhood memories, and dreams neither of us had ever shared with anyone else. Our friendship grew naturally. There were no secret meetings. No betrayals. Emma already knew we occasionally spoke and wished us both happiness. Months passed. One Saturday morning, Sophie invited me to volunteer at a local community kitchen. Watching her comfort lonely elderly people and encourage nervous children reminded me why everyone admired her. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. Kindness was simply part of who she was. Being around her slowly changed me. I became more patient, more grateful, more willing to forgive myself for mistakes I couldn't undo. For the first time since my breakup, I found myself looking forward to tomorrow instead of constantly comparing it with yesterday. Still, fear remained. I worried about how others might judge us. Would people assume our relationship had begun long before it actually did? Would they think we had betrayed Emma? Those questions haunted me every night. One evening, Sophie answered those fears before I even voiced them. She explained that genuine relationships should never be built on guilt or other people's assumptions. What mattered was honesty, respect, and timing. Nothing had happened while Emma and I were together. Nothing inappropriate had ever existed. Life had simply taken all of us down different roads until two lonely people unexpectedly found comfort in each other's company years later. Her words stayed with me. Several weeks later, Emma visited her parents. I felt incredibly nervous seeing her again. To my surprise, she hugged me warmly. She smiled at Sophie. Then she smiled at me. Without bitterness or resentment, she admitted that life had taken all three of us exactly where we needed to be. She thanked Sophie for always protecting the family. She thanked me for caring enough to return after so many years. That moment erased the final shadow hanging over my heart. The past no longer controlled us. It had simply shaped us. Months later, I returned to the same house carrying a small velvet box in my jacket pocket. This time there were no jokes. No nervous laughter. Only complete honesty. I asked Sophie if she would spend the rest of her life with me, not because I needed someone to heal old wounds, but because she had become my safest place, my greatest friend, and the person who reminded me that love is strongest when it grows from kindness rather than desperation. She smiled through tears before quietly saying yes. The room erupted with laughter, hugs, and happy tears. Even Emma celebrated with us, proving that mature hearts can choose peace instead of bitterness. Years later, whenever people asked how our story began, we laughed about the awkward joke that accidentally opened the door to a completely unexpected future. But deep inside, both of us knew the truth. It wasn't the joke that changed our lives. It was the courage to be honest after years of silence. Sometimes the greatest love stories don't begin with perfect timing. They begin when two broken people finally stop running from the past and start walking toward hope together. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, subscribe, and leave a comment. Your support helps us continue creating stories that remind people kindness, forgiveness, and second chances still exist in this world. Speech Balloon special request: before you leave, tell us in the comments, do you believe true love can find you again after heartbreak, or does life always have a different plan? As they stood together surrounded by family, they